The story begins with a wide shot of the ocean, where a man named Finn is seen. Equipped with diving gear and heavy equipment, Finn and his partner are searching underwater for something that has eluded explorers for centuries. Finn had been working there for days, tirelessly and with full dedication. It seemed clear he was hunting for a lost treasure. According to legends passed down for thousands of years, a royal ship carrying enormous wealth had sunk somewhere in this ocean, never to be found again. Many had tried before Finn, but despite years of effort, no one had ever discovered anything. Unlike the others, Finn refused to give up. With his partner, Finn dove deep into the ocean, drilling and surveying the seabed in hopes of finding even the smallest trace of the lost ship. They believed that if they found remnants, like wreckage or artifacts, it would reveal where the ship had gone down. Finn's drilling machine was connected to their boat above, powered by a generator that shook constantly to produce energy. But while Finn and his partner were working below, something dangerous was happening above. The vibrations from the generator caused sparks, which landed on a piece of paper. The wind carried the burning paper onto their supplies, and within minutes, their boat caught fire. Finn and his partner, completely focused on their search underwater, had no idea that their only vessel was being destroyed. Suddenly, the fire reached the generator, causing it to explode. Their entire boat was obliterated and sank to the ocean floor. When it hit the seabed, the impact stirred up clouds of sand and dirt. At first, Finn panicked, but then he spotted something remarkable, a metal plate buried in the seabed. Upon closer inspection, he realized it was ancient, likely from the same lost ship. It could very well be part of the treasure itself. For Finn, this was the first real sign of success after years of failure. While other researchers had long given up, he now had proof the legend was true. Excited, Finn rushed back up with his partner, only to discover the shocking truth: the burning wreck that had fallen into the water was their own boat. His only property, his lifeline, was completely destroyed. Stranded and devastated, Finn barely had time to react before men working for a gangster arrived. They captured him and brought him to their boss. The gangster had once lent Finn money, but since Finn had never repaid it, he now wanted his dues at any cost. Finn, frustrated and desperate, tried to explain that his only boat was gone. To save his life, he showed the gangster the ancient plate, swearing it belonged to the treasure ship. If they continued the search, Finn argued, the treasure could be found. But the gangster didn't believe him. To him, Finn's story sounded like an excuse, just another attempt to buy time. Furious, the gangster ordered his men to kill Finn and dump his body in the water for the fish to eat. They tied heavy weights to his legs and prepared to throw him into the depths. For Finn, it seemed like the final moment of his life had arrived. Finn pleaded desperately with the gangsters, promising them a share of the treasure if they spared his life. But their only intention was to kill him. Just as they were about to throw him into the water, Finn managed to surprise them, grabbing one of their guns. Cornered at the edge of the boat, he fired at the two men, wounding them. But in the struggle, Finn also fell into the ocean. With heavy weights tied to his legs, he was dragged deeper and deeper toward the bottom. He knew that if he didn't act quickly, he was going to die. Even the best free divers in the world could only hold their breath for a few minutes, and an average person barely lasted 30 to 40 seconds underwater before losing consciousness. The pressure in Finn's chest was unbearable, and he was suffocating fast. Just then, he spotted a gun sinking nearby. Summoning the last of his strength, he swam toward it, grabbed it, and shot through the chains binding his legs. Gasping for air, he burst back to the surface, barely surviving what could have been his final moments. All around him was nothing but endless ocean. Stranded in the middle of nowhere, swimming endlessly wasn't an option. Meanwhile, the story shifts to Finn's wife, Tess. She was at the courthouse with her lawyer, seeking a divorce. Finn was supposed to appear that day as well, but because of his troubles at sea, he was late. The judge made it clear, if Finn didn't show up soon, the decision would be made against him, granting Tess the divorce and awarding her whatever property Finn still had left. By the time Finn finally rushed in, it was already too late. The judge had ruled in Tess's favor. Finn tried to explain, pleading with Tess to give their marriage another chance, to start fresh. But Tess was tired of him. She had endured years of neglect while Finn obsessed over treasure hunting, never giving her time or stability. That's why she wanted out. Tess told Finn she was moving forward with her studies and her own life, and that she now legally owned all of his property, including his boat. Finn, with a defeated look, admitted the truth: the boat had been destroyed just the day before. Hearing this, Tess lost her temper and even struck him in anger. But Finn wasn't ready to give up. To convince her, he revealed the discovery he had made, the ancient plate he had found on the ocean floor. He sketched its design for Tess. Since Tess was studying archaeology, the markings shocked her. She had read about similar artifacts in her research. Still, The problem was that the plate itself was no longer with Finn, it had been taken by the gangsters. That meant if they wanted proof, they'd have to retrieve it from them first. Even then, Tess doubted him. She wondered if Finn was spinning lies again to avoid losing her. Still, curiosity made her agree to investigate further with him. But soon after, Tess decided she wanted nothing to do with Finn's reckless treasure hunt. She returned to her old job on a boat owned by a man named Nigel, where she worked as his assistant, handling meals and daily tasks. Tess's only real goal was simple: to stay far away from Finn, earn some money, and complete her studies in peace. At the very least, Tess's new job could open doors for her in any big city. She even told her boss, Nigel, that they should leave soon for whichever city he planned to travel to. But Nigel refused, saying he couldn't go until his daughter, Liz, arrived. Liz had stayed behind in town for some shopping, but she was expected within a few hours. Tess grew impatient for reasons she couldn't even explain, she just wanted to get moving. Meanwhile, Finn sat with a close friend, frustrated and hopeless. He wondered aloud how he could possibly continue the treasure hunt without money or resources. What he needed was funding, but who would ever believe his story enough to back him? That's when his friend mentioned someone, a billionaire named Nigel. If Finn could somehow meet him, maybe Nigel would agree to finance the search. But the problem was obvious: Nigel wasn't the type of man you could simply approach. You needed an appointment, and Finn had no chance of getting one. That's when his friend suggested another way in: Nigel's daughter, Liz. If Finn could somehow befriend her, she might give him access to Nigel himself. Finn thought the idea was brilliant. Soon, he found out when and where Liz was arriving. He rushed to the shoreline just as a helicopter descended, carrying Nigel's daughter. Surrounded by security, Liz stepped out with the aura of wealth and privilege, clearly the daughter of a billionaire. She was escorted straight into a sleek motorboat bound for her father. Finn secretly followed in a small boat, waiting for a chance to get close. That chance came quickly. The wind blew Liz's hat off, sending it flying toward the water. Finn seized the opportunity, speeding forward to catch it. So focused was he on grabbing the hat that he didn't notice Liz's motorboat coming straight at him. Within seconds, his little boat collided with hers, throwing him violently into the water and leaving him badly injured. On Liz's command, her bodyguards pulled Finn aboard to save him. When Nigel saw a stranger on his boat, he demanded to know who he was. Liz explained how Finn had bravely tried to catch her hat, calling him kind-hearted and gallant. Hearing this, Nigel was impressed and, in gratitude, invited Finn to stay for dinner that evening. Finn's plan had worked perfectly. Not only had he secured a meeting with Nigel, but he was also invited into his world. That night, Finn dined with Nigel and Liz, while Tess, serving as Nigel's assistant, brought dishes to the table. When she spotted Finn sitting there, she froze in shock. The very man she had been trying so hard to escape had found his way into her life again. Their reactions made it clear to Nigel that they knew each other. Finn then explained everything, that he and Tess were once married, but she had divorced him. Tess couldn't believe he had come this far. She asked why he couldn't just leave her alone once and for all. But Finn clarified that he wasn't there for her, he was there for Nigel. He had something important to discuss. And so, Finn laid out his plan, describing in detail the legendary treasure. He spoke of an ancient king who had once ruled an island nearby, a king said to have possessed unimaginable wealth. That treasure, Finn claimed, still lay hidden, waiting to be discovered. But one day, due to an emergency, the king ordered the treasure to be loaded onto several ships so it could be moved to another location. The only problem was that back then, the seas were constantly hit by violent storms. Regular boats couldn't survive those waves, so people built a special type of ship that could withstand even the fiercest storms. The king filled those ships with treasure and sent them far away. As time passed, word spread that none of the ships survived the storms, except one. That special ship carried most of the treasure, but no one knew what became of it. The truth only came out when the ship's captain was spotted on a distant island. He had hidden the vessel there to keep the treasure safe. In fact, Finn had been researching this for years, and from that very treasure he discovered an ancient plate, proof that the treasure was still nearby. He believed that if they could just find it, they'd never have to work another day in their lives. Nigel, already rich but greedy for more, was tempted by Finn's words. He agreed to join the hunt. Tess, who had only wanted to focus on her studies, was also convinced, at least for a while. Finn was clearly the most knowledgeable among them when it came to exploration. The very next day, they all began their journey toward the island where Finn had discovered the ancient plate. But suddenly, Finn learned that the entire island had already been bought by a gangster, who had seized control of the surrounding territory to ensure he would find the treasure first. When Nigel and Tess found out, they grew furious at Finn, though it wasn't his fault. Before he knew it, Finn was captured by the gangsters' men and forced to reveal everything he knew. Now the treasure hunt had become a race against a dangerous new competitor. The gangster sent divers underwater to search for the treasure. When they discovered that Finn was arriving by ship, they declared that the land, and the treasure, already belonged to them. But Finn countered, saying, "Whoever finds it first, owns it." A challenge had been set between the two groups. Wasting no time, Finn strapped on an oxygen tank and dove into the water. Down below, he saw the gangsters' men digging at the very spot where he had once found the ancient plate. They had even planted underwater mines, planning to trigger an explosion to force the treasure out. After setting the charges, they returned to the surface, leaving only the detonator. Finn couldn't let that happen. He swam to the mines and began pulling out wires, but in the process, he accidentally disconnected the wrong one. A small blast shook the seabed, throwing him backward. But the explosion also revealed something incredible, an ancient, rusted sword rising up from the sand. Its glint was visible even from the surface, drawing everyone's attention, including the gangsters' men, who now realized the treasure must be buried here. One of the gangsters' men set off smaller blasts, and the current carried Finn upward, while the sword was flung toward the other side. Finn surfaced near the gangsters' boat, where they grabbed him and beat him mercilessly. They wanted to make sure he didn't interfere again. Meanwhile, the sword drifted toward Nigel's boat. After a while, the gangsters dumped Finn back onto Nigel's deck, badly hurt. Finn examined the ancient sword closely. Its craftsmanship was unlike anything he had ever seen, further proof that the treasure was nearby. But it was late, so the group decided to rest for the night. Finn lay in his cabin, lost in thought, while Tess sat awake in hers, her mind racing. Eventually, unable to resist, she got up and walked straight to Finn's room to talk to him. But when she opened the door, Finn wasn't there. Finn had traveled to a nearby island, the very place where the gangster and his crew were hiding out. Without hesitation, he drew his sword and started cutting them down one by one. At first, Finn had hoped to talk to them, but since they attacked him directly, he had no choice but to fight back. After taking out most of them, one member suddenly struck him from behind, knocking him unconscious. The small-time gangster, Blackie, had learned everything about Finn and was just about to kill him. But Finn argued that his men would never be able to find the treasure without him. He offered to locate the treasure himself and even share a percentage of it with Blackie. Furious, the gangster rejected the offer, saying he didn't want just a cut, he wanted the entire treasure. Still, he gave Finn a choice. If Finn found the treasure for him, he would let him live and forgive all of his debts. Reluctantly, Finn agreed, knowing this was the only way to save his life. When Finn returned to his boat, Tess immediately asked where he had been. He finally confessed everything. The moment Tess learned how much money Finn had borrowed from the gangster, she was completely shocked. But now, finding the treasure was the only way to keep him alive. The next day, both teams set out for the waters where the treasure was rumored to be hidden. Equipped with gas cylinders, they dove beneath the surface and searched for hours. Of course, the treasure wasn't going to be found so easily. The entire day passed with nothing to show for it. By nightfall, Finn was standing in despair, unsure where else to look. They had already searched nearly everywhere. Nigel, Tess, and Liz joined him outside, sitting in a restaurant, thinking hard about what mistake they might be making. Finn was certain of one thing: the ancient ship's captain would have hidden it somewhere clever, not in a place everyone could find. Just then, the captain of Nigel's boat came over, warning them that a heavy storm was approaching. He suggested they anchor near a tiny island nearby, since it had no rocky terrain and storms usually didn't hit it directly. Something about that struck Finn as strange. He rushed over and asked why the captain was so insistent about the small island. When the captain explained that it was safe from rocks and storms, Finn suddenly realized something important: maybe what they were looking for was hidden near that island. The next morning, Finn, Tess, and Nigel dove into the waters around the small island. At first, they found nothing. But then, they stumbled upon an ancient cannon lying at the bottom of the sea. Tess lit up with excitement, and Finn immediately recognized it as part of the sunken ship they were searching for. Using metal and gold detectors, they soon uncovered more fragments of the old vessel. It became clear that the captain had deliberately brought the ship here, hiding it near the island. Over time, the ship had broken apart and sunk beneath the water. Even after hours of searching, though, the actual treasure still wasn't there. That meant it had to be hidden somewhere on the island itself. Finn recalled an old clue suggesting there was a church on this tiny island, right at its center. So he and Tess wasted no time. They trekked through the forest until they finally reached the ancient church. It looked abandoned, untouched for decades. Inside, they discovered a dusty old cupboard containing several books. Hoping for a clue, they began reading through them. Tess quickly pulled out one particular book and started flipping through its pages. What shocked them most was that the book didn't read like a legend, it felt like someone's personal diary. As Finn studied it more closely, he realized it was written almost like a confession. The writer described how, when he first came to the island, he thought no one else could ever find it. But soon, armies began arriving, one after another. That meant the treasure was no longer safe here. To protect it forever, the man decided to bury it. The book even mentioned a grave, marked with a name, that would point the way. Following that clue, Finn and Tess made their way into the island's graveyard. Dozens of graves lay scattered across the place, but one stood out from the rest. It bore the very same name as the ship they had been searching for. Instantly, they both felt certain, something had to be hidden inside. Maybe the treasure itself. Together, Finn and Tess dug through the earth for hours until finally they uncovered a container. With pounding hearts, they opened it, but instead of gold, all they found was a letter. Inside the letter were not only words, but also a set of coordinates. It turned out to be a message written long ago by the ship's captain himself. He explained that he had known enemies would eventually come looking for the treasure, so he had hidden it in a mysterious place no one could ever reach. The letter revealed the coordinates of a tiny rocky island. The most shocking part? That island stayed submerged underwater the entire year, except for one rare moment. When the tides dropped to their lowest, the island briefly emerged above the waves. By sheer luck, that exact time was happening right now. Which meant, if Finn and Tess hurried, they could actually reach the treasure. Excited and determined, they prepared to leave immediately. They finally had the coordinates. All they had to do was travel there, claim the treasure, and get away. And that's how our story comes to an end.